Hi, Deacon Ed McCormick here on a Sunday at St. John the Baptist Catholic Community. And I've just come from Mass where in the Gospel we hear the apostles asking Jesus to increase their faith, which is kind of interesting. It means that they have some sense that they don't have full faith in the coming of the kingdom that Jesus is proclaiming. They don't maybe fully believe in him. And Jesus looks at him and says, if you guys had faith the size of a mustard seed, you could rip up this, you could command that this mulberry bush be ripped up and tossed into the sea. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about faith. You know, we live in a secular age that makes it difficult to have faith. It makes it difficult for us to believe in God, to have an experience of God, to practice our faith, to come to church on Sunday, to pray. And part of what happens in our secular age is you get this kind of popular conviction that faith is a leap. You make a leap of faith as if you're going to jump into the dark. Or as some of the popular atheists say, faith is belief without evidence. Now let's get clear from the start. Christian faith is neither of these. It's not a leap of faith. It's not a leap into the dark. Nor is Christian faith belief without evidence. By the way, our modern scientists all make an active faith. They are believers. And I don't mean believers in God. Of course, many are. No, but they make an active faith. Every time a scientist engages in his craft, or a doctor looks into a microscope, they are making an act of faith. The act of faith the scientist makes is that the created world, the universe, is intelligible. They just assume it. They believe it. And they also believe that their mind is able to make sense of that world. They assume that when they look into the microscope, what's in the microscope has an intelligibility, and they assume they have the capacity to find out what that intelligibility is. So even scientists make an act of faith. So what does it mean for us to make an act of faith, and why isn't it a leap in the dark? Why isn't it an act of believing without evidence? Well, first of all, I think the evidence for belief is everywhere. Look around me. All of these things are here. These trees and these clouds and the sun and this grass, the sunlight, oxygen, gravity, the electromagnetic field. All of these things exist. And none of them, including me, including you, can exist on our own. This is all evidence that God is creating, constantly bringing things into existence and keeping them in existence. And so we have lots of evidence that God is creating. It's all around us. But our secular age blinds us to it. But once you start to notice that this is all a gift, this is all constantly being given to us, then faith is a response to the constant generosity of God the Creator. And this response is certainly an act of trust. We make an act of trust that God's creating everything, that the sun will rise, that there'll be oxygen on our planet and food. And so faith is first of all an act of trust in response to God's generous creativity, God constantly being present to all things and creating everything. But let's go a little deeper, because faith is also an act of trust in Jesus. You see, our faith is a faith in an event, Jesus' death and resurrection. It's a faith in a person. Our faith is a faith in a person. And so faith is a relationship that has been initiated by Jesus, who keeps coming to us in the power of the Spirit and pouring out his life, sharing his divine life with us, giving us the gifts and fruits of the Spirit, gathering us to him so that we can live as his new creation. as his new people. And so this is a faith in the person of Jesus, but it's also an act of trust that he is actually offering us a new kind of life, a life that is not possible simply by consuming things. It's not possible simply from the works of science. It doesn't come from entertainment. This is a new kind of life. And so it's a faith in Jesus and a faith in the kind of new life that he wants to give you. And there's evidence for this, lots of it. If you start to notice, perhaps you've noticed that sometimes you're able to be compassionate or kind or generous or let go of past slights or hurts. Maybe you've noticed that your heart and mind becomes open and caring for even people you don't know. We've just endured this terrible hurricanes in Puerto Rico and in Florida, and people are responding generously. What's moving them? That's the work of the Spirit. What creates bonds and connections between people? That's the work of the Holy Spirit. What enables you to love, to forgive, to act on behalf of the poor? This is all evidence of the kind of life that comes from Jesus. And this takes us a step further, because faith is not just trust. Faith is an allegiance, the allegiance we give to Jesus. As we start to discover that the kind of life he offers us is good and beautiful and meaningful, we start to want to give ourselves to him. We want to give ourselves to his kingdom. And this is an act of allegiance. Our allegiance is to him. We have a whole world in which people show their allegiance to their particular football team or soccer team, whether it's a pro or college team. And our faith is calling us to give our allegiance to Jesus and his mission and his kingdom, because we believe it is bringing about peace and justice and the kind of life our world needs. And finally, our faith involves practices, communal and personal practices. St. Paul in Galatians says that faith is enacted in love. And so real faith is this response to God creating, to the new life that Jesus brings us. Real faith is a response to the healing and reconciling and freedom that Jesus brings us. It is our allegiance to him, but above all, it's found in acts of faith that are our way of cooperating with Jesus' work and mission. And each day we're offered the opportunity to engage in all kinds of acts of faith. Small acts of kindness that can add up and ripple out, acts of generosity, acts of service. And so, my friends, I hope this gives you a much more robust and full view of what it means to have faith in our secular age.